Retirement. I love being retired. Yep. Well, obviously, I'm a horticulturalist and a farmer, guitar player. I'm not an economic or retirement consultant, although I frequently will talk about investing, at least. Economics, and no, oh boy. But investing, I do talk about it. Although I'm not really qualified, so don't pay attention to anything I say. But, somewhere between 35 and 65, I started to consider the idea that one of these days I was going to have to, or was going to want to retire. And at 55, it got pretty serious. Yeah. In a way, you could say maybe I was a little disadvantaged over some people to find retirement because, I had been part of the pension world at one point. Okay. And, well, of course, because I used to change jobs frequently, I did, and moved around a lot. Mostly, I never really fully, qualified for a lot of these pensions. I had some pretty good ones. I had a Teamsters pension and such. I had a Carpenters Union pension. Anyway, push come to shove, the world threw out all the pensions one day. Yeah, and everything got converted to 401ks and IRAs. And, I was able to take whatever I had from that world and transfer it into this world. Yeah, it all rolled over eventually into 401ks. So whatever was left of pensions, I know the one with the Carpenters Union got looted. Yeah, the management just ran off with the money anyway. I've heard these kind of stories before from other people about pensions. I suppose you got a teacher's pension, police pension. These are good things, military pensions, but some of the other ones. As I was growing older and trying to think about what was going to happen, because I didn't want to have to work the rest of my life, I wanted to take some time to enjoy myself. I have been about 50-50. About half of the time I have worked for other people or run businesses for them. The other half as independent, an entrepreneur, and I did what for myself. It's all work. After a while, but the truth is, when it came to being an employee for other people, most of the time, I usually found myself wishing that I didn't have to bother with that so I could actually pay attention to what I felt like I really wanted to be doing. Yeah, that's been my life story. Sometimes I doubled this up. I worked, as a welder and a maintenance man and stuff like that during the day, and then I'd get on stage and I'd play all night long as a guitarist. I wanted to be a musician, but I never made enough money at it to be able to survive, so I worked as a welder in the day and so on. This kind of situation for me. If anybody ever wonders, why does the Green Garden guy know how to do so many things? Well, I'll tell you why. I wanted to be a successful rock and roll guitarist. Yeah, well, I never made that goal. I'm a rock and roll guitarist, but I don't know about being successful. And so in the meantime, I did everything from, cook pizzas, flip hamburgers, swing hammers, build barns, build houses, repair forklifts. Yeah, I did all sorts of different things. Plumbed, yeah. Well, going back about 20 years ago, I realized that I would really start to have to make some sort of plans if I wanted to retire successfully. And I had known people who either didn't make plans, and wow, they didn't know what to do once they got there. I known people that did make good plans, and then health took them before they could really use it. My stepfather passed away from cancer before he was actually able to really appreciate what he'd done, and so on. And so I decided it was going to be important to me because I wanted to have time to myself to do what I wanted to do in this life. And so in retirement, that looked like the best place for it. I better start planning. Well, that involved for me kind of like two things. One was location, where, finance, which is how. Location thing's perhaps a little easier than the finance thing, I guess. I don't know. They're kind of the same. But if I was looking at statistics, studies done on, how does an American retire successfully and so on, it's frightening. I'll bet the rest of you who've looked at this probably find it frightening. It's been a while, but the last time I studied it, they were saying like you need 1.5 mil to be able to retire successfully because we're living a little longer, and you're going to have to spend this money. Of course, all of that calculation, the math, really was based on, not having other outside sources of income to buffer retirement. It basically says, you're going to bank $1.5 million. You're going to punch the card out at 65, walk into the street, and live till probably about 76 or 80 years old or whatever, an average 75 something, I think right now, I don't know. Anyway, you live to an average old age before you drop dead, and you will basically have to take every penny that you're using to buy a loaf of bread and gasoline out of the account you put aside for retirement. Well, looking at that made me turn blue. There was no way. Like I said, I started the pension world, which then rolled over. And then, of course, for me, in between, there was divorce, which, completely destroyed most of the equity I built up as a man earlier in my life. And so I find myself in midlife with not too much anything, and I had to start all over again. And that was about the right around the 401k change, too, from pensions to 401ks. And so, well, obviously I had to take seriously stuff and money aside. So I did. I don't remember. I think 20%, I believe, was what I was doing, tossing it into the 401k at work, tossing 20% of my money into there every week. It didn't amount to 1.5 mil. No, it didn't even get close. It's a lot of money, but it ain't that much. And so looking at it, I'd go, oh man, if I'm to read the statistics on this, there's no way I can never retire. Then the other was, I had to find a place. Prior to living in California, I lived in northern Wisconsin, and very rural. Very rural. We had coyotes, timberwolves, bear, bald eagles, trout in the streams. It was nice. Cold. Lots of mosquitoes, but nice. And I had 240 acres. It's a big spread. I love the country living. I do. I enjoy it a lot. I'm one who's been both. Downtown to the belly of the beast in Chicago and out on the farm, feeding the chickens. I've had both experiences almost equally in this life. I know which ones I like the best. Visiting a city's okay for a little while, but I get nervous at too many people. I got to get out of there. It's just too much, like all the brainwaves. It's like all this static energy going on all over the place. I get no peace. So I wanted to retire somewhere in the country. Yeah, I wanted somewhere that was more laid back. For me, Central Coast, California, San Luis Obispo was supposed to be the plan. That's what I had in mind. Great. It's a agricultural educational college, Cal Poly there. It's a county seat. It's it's great politics, best farmers market in the state probably, and so on. It was a real good place. And right close to the ocean, but it didn't happen. I got my money aside, took the ducks, went on out, and when I was ready to start to shop for a piece, bang, I got hit with a 300% increase in real estate values almost overnight because of the California real estate boom. And, whereas San Luis had only been 50% of the evaluation of the town of Fremont where we lived, it just went, and prices soared. I gave up. Yeah, that was out. Now, I have friends that encouraged me to look here, and so due to my friends and synchronicities in life, we ended up in Hawaii, which ended up to be the right plan. Again, I'm not a consultant on this, but I would definitely advise, if at all possible, that somewhere in midlife, you begin attempting to try to pay down your debt. That's one of the things that weighs on Americans horribly. Almost every one of us is in debt. I think I heard a figure the other day on the TV news, something about the average American carrying $7,000 on a credit card. Wow. I'm out of the loop. I don't understand these things, all right? Because they just don't live that way. For us, credit cards are only plastic cash. We treat them as such, Ellen and I both, which I'll get to that. But the paying down debt, and I mean, frankly, credit card debt is almost irrelevant when it comes to this because you don't need it and you didn't have to have it most of the time. Occasionally emergencies come up in our lives, and that can be the only way we can cover them, and so you do that. But otherwise, most of us, we just rack that stuff up. That's all. You buy too much, you shop too much, you put too much of it on credit. Me, when the greenbacks in my wallet run out, I stop shopping until they fill back up. Yeah. So that's kind of a, deal with your cash flows, man. Deal with your cash flows. Don't try to extend yourself beyond them when you're attempting to try to go for retirement. You learn to live within your cash flows. And don't do the thing that, I can borrow 20 grand and I could do that. It's not a good idea. For most of us, we have credit card debts. We have auto loans. Auto loans can be fairly significant depending on what kind of car you drive. I highly recommend getting rid of auto loans. Pay them down. Pay them off. Hopefully get them paid off quick so you can still drive the car for the next 7 years, cash free as far as that's concerned. That's a good start right there. Okay, that one's not a coqui frog. That's a gecko. They chirp too. But luckily, they're not quite as loud and they're not as repetitious. They don't go, hoogie, hoogie, hoogie. No, they just periodic, chirp a little. Not bad. I kind of like them. Anyway, so paying down that credit card debt, of course, all logical junk, right? Trying not to get yourself involved in, buying a Lamborghini, so you can get rid of your automobile debts. Beginning to limit your overheads. Yeah, I mean, during your working career, it is a great time to invest in solar energy. I keep saying this, all right? It's a great time because you have the money to finance it then, and it will take a huge load off of you, especially now that we have EVs. I'm preaching this again, but I'm serious, man. It's an equation to success. If you install solar energy on your house, and then go ahead and get yourself an EV and plug it into it, you will remove almost all of your utility bills, and you will also remove your gasoline from the equation. That's a lot of money. Yep. And so all of that can then be banked, all right? And, people talk about how long it takes to pay down the solar collector. So I'm telling you, we had $6 a gallon for gasoline over here for quite a while. It's been over $5 a gallon right now. How long does it take to pay down $42,000 worth of solar collectors when you're paying $6 a gallon for gasoline if you're charging your car with it? Not long. It doesn't take long, not even half as long as you think it might. So there's, again, reducing your overhead. paying down your debts, getting off that credit card, paying off the auto loans, going to solar energy, just to be said. Now, I have people tell me, well, you can do that because you live in Hawaii, Well, guess what, folks? Bill might live in Hawaii, but I live in one of the rainiest parts of the United States of America. Yes, we get 120 to 150 inches of rain every year around here, unless we go into a drought. And, well, you know what comes with rain? Clouds. Lots and lots and lots and lots of clouds. We get clouds all the time. I would say most of you in the U.S., even in Seattle, probably get more sunny days than I get here. Now, the only advantage I have, I have an advantage. My advantage is that I don't have to worry about heating and cooling. All right, so almost all the rest of you have to have climate control, and that takes a lot of energy. Well, so what that means is that you need more collectors if you're going to have to run an air conditioner in Arizona nonstop than I use, because I just open the windows here. But nevertheless, we use solar energy here in one of the worst places in the country to use it, and it's extremely successful. Right, Gracie? And my cat's come by. She's checking things out. She says, how's the video going, Bill? I'd pick her up so you could see her, but the truth is, Gracie doesn't really like being picked up. She loves being petted on the ground.
Yeah, there's my Gracie cat. She come for a visit. She always wants to know what I'm up to, checking up on me. Right, Grace? Good girl. Yeah.
Well, like I said, reducing overhead. Now, for some of you, that's I don't know what your overheads are, right? But for most of us, we definitely have utility bills. Might have fuel expenses for cars, that kind of thing. We have our food bills, and well, yeah, the green garden guy. I'm talking about retirement. Naturally, what am I going to tell you to do? Plant cabbages. I mean, get into gardening. Seriously, if you get into gardening when you're a younger person, you will become rather skilled and adept at it. As you grow older, you might become an expert. Who knows? Yeah, you do something over and over and over and over again. You really can become quite skilled. And so if you start learning to grow food younger in life, one, it's going to reduce your overhead. I mean, you really dent a grocery bill by producing 200 pounds of potatoes. You could really, plant yourself a few apple trees so you get fruit to eat, and so on. Being able to walk into the yard and harvest your food for the dinner table is just, well, I can't say too much about it. I've been doing it for decades at this point. For me, this goes well back into my 20s. So we've been 50 years basically walking out into the yard and plucking supper. Now, it takes a little bit of education in that regard because, I'm pretty good as a cook. I worked commercially at times cooking, but I also cooked for my brother. I've cooked for families, and so I've done a lot of cooking in my life. So I have a pretty good idea, if I walk through the garden and I say, I get string beans, let's see, this carrot's over here, I got, the oranges are ripe, and so on, as to what to gather up, to bring it inside the house, set it down, and make a successful meal out of it. Now, ordinarily, I'm also adding things, from my freezer, my frozen fishes and stuff like this, things I bought from the store. We don't grow rice here. Right? And so if I'm going to eat rice, it's come from California and so on. So, but reducing overhead by learning to garden and cutting into that grocery bill throughout a large part of your life, because the money you didn't spend on the fruit you were picking, the more money you were able to put in the bank. Now, I'm going to hear one argument. I can hear it already out in the wings, because as a nursery proprietor, a person who's run these businesses to sell plants and fertilizers, people will frequently say to me, oh, but gardening is so expensive. Well, I guess that's possible, but really, from my approach, only if you're doing it wrong. No, gardens should be profit. You should have more money in your pocket at the end of the garden than you had when you started. And so if you put $1 into growing a cabbage that would have cost you $8 otherwise, that's very significant savings. So I recommend cutting the overhead by learning how to garden well, because then, after you're retired, you may find yourself like me. We raise most of our own food, and I got food to feed half the neighborhood, you see. And whereas I do give a lot of it away, when we do, this is Hawaii, aloha, but I sell most of it. Yeah, most of it we sell. And so, and you can figure out other ways to make a profit off of stuff too. I mean, I sell fruit tree seed. So if I sit down and I eat a particular type of fruit for breakfast, the seeds that are harvested from it then go onto the internet and become cash later, because somebody else puts them in their garden. Yeah, I would not believe the people who tell you that it's too expensive. They're just not approaching it quite right. That's all. You take a different approach. Every garden I've ever had, I walk into that garden the first day I see it and I said, "You're going to pay." Yes, every piece of land I have ever owned, that piece of land was required to profit me. I see no point in owning real estate at all unless the real estate pays me back. And so that's one reason we're in the situation we're in, is because I have forced what's usually a debt to people to become a positive by using the land to raise things and, selling a bushel of apples, selling cobs of corn, and so on and so forth. I really don't necessarily encourage people to live in poverty unless, of course, that's the only place you can be. But to live like a pauper, because you're worried about the future, you may never make it to the future. It might not be there. It's illusionary anyway. Where you're going, where you are is the only place that you're at. And so if you're, living here now and suffering under your economic regime and however you're living, you need to make adjustments at this point. Because that's the only place you're going to be, and if you're suffering now, you'll be suffering later too. Yeah, pie in the sky is, for most of us, the real estate we own is probably our greatest value. It's our greatest asset, most of us. Some of us, our 401ks might be. Depends. If you work for Google, you got into their stock buying programs, you're probably very rich right now. Considering that for most of us it's the home, we're going to be looking at that as being the leverage that we use. Now, you get several ways you can approach this. You can attempt to pay down your mortgage as much as possible and stay put while retiring. Okay. Now, there's all sorts of possibilities. If you didn't pay the mortgage down and you're staying put wherever you're at, well, you can always, I guess, try to rent a room to somebody, bring in a roomer or do things like that to be able to try to help to get the house to pay itself somewhat. But ideally, what I recommend is that if you can manage it, you try to pay the mortgage off. Now, in our case, we did not do that, right? It wasn't possible. Timeline was too short. Between the purchase of the building and the time we retired, it was too short to be able to really cover a 30-year mortgage. Okay. But, so the house in California was on a mortgage. This place here, when I built it, was then put on a mortgage. All right. So we had two mortgages. Lucky for us, the house in California was worth so much money because of the boom that when it was sold and we decided to retire and moved here to this house, it not only paid off the note that was left on this house, but it left enough money to be able to put into savings for the future. Okay. And so depending on where you live, right? Now, let's say, for instance, if I was still living in northern Wisconsin, I don't know what the real estate values are right there now, but I know they're not that high. Okay, that's one reason I lived there at the time. And if you sold your house in northern Wisconsin and tried to move to Hawaii to retire, for instance, so you'd be going from low cost of living to a high cost of living place, low real estate, high real estate, that kind of situation probably isn't going to pay out very well. It's going to be difficult to do. I'd say if you're living in northern Wisconsin right now and you plan to retire, it's an okay place to retire. I'd stay put. That'd be my suggestion, I guess, but whatever you want to do. On the other hand, if you're in California or Washington or Oregon or some other place where real estate values have just gone insane, well, you got a lot of options because, even still to this point, between the Bay Area in California and Puna here in eastern Hawaii, Puna is still cheap, okay, compared to Bay Area, California. It's gone up a lot, but it's still cheap. And so if you sold the house there and you moved here, yeah, probably you'd be able to settle everything out. You might be able to do that. We did. Yeah, well, if you're living someplace where the real estate isn't worth that much, but you still want to retire maybe in a less busy area or so forth, there are options. They're not my options, but people go all different kinds of places. Like I said, my buddy Mac is escaping the hurricane today. He has a condo in Florida, in Tampa, and that's another way to do business. You can stay put right where you're at, and you can downsize. Yeah, if you're in a 4-bedroom family house and all the kids are gone and there's nothing else there, why keep it? You'd sell it off, and then you can get a smaller place to live, and maybe even stay put right where you're at if that's what you want, or move. It's possible to. I don't know. You could probably sell a decent home in parts of the mainland, and still manage to find yourself, condos or other small fixtures, even over here. That's possible. Downsizing. Well, enough of that. What I really wanted to say is that retirement's great. I love this, man. I get up every morning. The cat wakes me up. Yeah, she's my little alarm clock. She comes up and she sits on my shoulder and says, "Bill, come on, let's get out of bed." So we have a little session with some purring and petting and stuff, and I have the time in the morning. I do not use an alarm clock. I use a cat, okay? Not that I needed the cat. I had to get up anyway, but yeah, it's a night. I have an alarm clock that goes, which is just fine by me. It's real soft, real gentle. I get a warm, furry awakening, and then we get up and feed the cat, make a pot of coffee, sit down and watch the sun come up every morning over the Pacific. Watch the sun come up. It's great. Yes. And now, because I have the time in life, because I don't have the pressure for income. I have no pressure for income. Okay, we have set ourselves up here so that we're covered, man. Yeah, I'm loving it. I love watching the sunrise come up over the ocean. Yeah, I really enjoy being able to just kind of sit down, a little piece of paper and a pencil and make a few notes as I'm drinking my coffee over there, eating my eggs in the morning. I'm usually at breakfast by 7 a.m. I enjoy that timing. And I'll sit down, I'll start to take the day and go, well, let's see now. Let's see, I think I'll do a video about retirement. Let's see, and jot this little bit of stuff down over there and then kind of go through it during the day and check it off. And I might have finished the list today. Push some of the stuff off to the next day or the next day, whatever it takes, because there's no pressure for the most part. Now, I get started on projects like painting the house or something. Yeah, there are things. I have things that do have pressure. The corn needs to go in now, if I want to crop or so on. But it's minor. It's nothing like I used to experience in the workplace. I've been interviewing people over the years about their nightmares, about dreams and nightmares. What I discovered is that most people who are over 40, when they have nightmares, it's not boogeymen and monsters anymore. Okay, it's generally speaking about work. Yes, it's some evil boss, some stupid thing that happened at work. Maybe it's even a repeat of what you went through, But I think work has that is, employment has a serious effect on our mental health. Actually, it leaves most of us in the small level PTSD. I mean, I think they're over now. I believe I have stopped having nightmares about my employment, but there was a period of time while I was still employed towards the end there, that every time I had a lousy dream, I was standing in front of a punch clock and couldn't remember how to fill the time card out or something because I'd been on salary for so many years. I didn't know how to use a clock, crazy stuff like that. Just annoying dreams about work, aggravation. So when you really are finally liberated from that, you have no idea. But you have to liberate yourself. It's like nobody's going to do this for you. You have to intentionally kind of let go. I've said this to a few people close to me in the past. My brother, for instance, who went ahead and he was driven crazy by the Korean car manufacturers. I think it was Kia, because of the kind of workplace environment that the Koreans have, and he worked for them. He went off the deep end at 62 and couldn't take it anymore and retired. But then again, I guess they decided that that wasn't going to be enough money for him. And his wife was younger, still working, and so he went back to work again. I don't know, and now he works for a lumberyard building supply place. I guess he finds it a whole lot more tolerable than working for Hyundai or Kia, whichever it was. I think it was both actually at one point and the other. I've told him many times, not that Bob listens to me, but I've told him, I said, man, retirement is the time to be able, if you want to run a business, to go into a business that you always wanted to do. I've been a horticulturalist most of my life and made a fair amount of money off it through my working career, but having a casual farm in Hawaii, selling pineapples, and talking to the birds, that was kind of a dream for me, a good way to make a living, and I'm here with it. I made it. We're doing it. And the truth of the matter is that I collect Social Security. I started at 65 and a half, but I don't use it. Well, I have a bank account that my checks deposit in. I look at it every once in a while. I go, oh, that's nice. Look at that. I could buy myself a car and beyond. But when it gets to the point it can buy a Corvette, maybe I'll. No, I can't fit in a Corvette anyway. It's like wearing a jock strap for me. But it's an excellent time, actually, to start a business that doesn't necessarily have to be particularly profitable. If it's partially successful, you're good. You can keep it running. If it's but you would pick something that you always wanted to do or had been trying to do all your life. I mean, for me, had I not finally burned out on being a rock musician, this would be a time in my life where if I wanted to start traveling the clubs around the island here and picking and grinning for people, I could do that. I don't want to do it. I like staying right here on the farm, growing food. Yeah, it's where I want to be. But it's an excellent time to start yourself a small business. Yeah, that's right. And so for us, like I said, I have Social Security. I don't use it. I have an IRA and that I put up, and I don't use it. Occasionally, I have pulled money from the IRA to invest in things like with solar energy on the roof. I used money from my IRA when we bought the EV. And so large expenditures I will tap in when I need it, but that's all that stuff's for. My day-to-day is covered by cash flow here on the island and by cash flow on the internet. So if you set yourself up with small businesses that are reasonably profitable, and if you have all your expenses paid down, you don't have much overhead, you may find that on a small trickle of cash coming through the place, you probably stay fat and happy. Happy anyway. That's what's happened for us. I was so worried. Yeah. Yeah, when I look at figures like 1.5 mil you got to have, if you think you're going to retire, and I said, oh man, I can never do this. So we didn't listen to it. We went ahead and did it our way, and we found out that we didn't have to do it that way. I am very happy, both of us, very happy with the way things are. Honestly, the truth of the matter is we don't pinch pennies, man. I'm going to spend whatever money I want to spend, although I'm not an extravagant person, I'm just not. Ellen probably's a little more extravagant when it comes to clothing. She worked for Nordstrom. She loves clothes, and so she buys plenty of shoes and clothes and stuff. But there's no hardship, man. There's no hardship. We just do whatever the heck we really want to do. Now, I have friends like my buddy Jimmy, the drummer there. He put up more money than I did during his life. Jimmy really worked for this. And so him and Kay travel a lot. And for some people, traveling in retirement is the way to go, Some people want to do that. So it depends. Now, that can be pretty expensive, especially today, too. So if that is your dream, you're going to have to really put up. Yeah, I got to put plenty of money up. And you'll probably be using your IRA and probably using your Social Security, Mine just sits there waiting for someday we might need it, or from my family to inherit it. Whatever. Yeah, it's like that. It can be like that. That's the truth. It can be that way. That's how casual our lives are. Money don't mean much. Very few things really pressuring, very important. I just love being retired, man. Like I said, it's another point there. It's a great time to be able to set yourself up into a business that you always wanted to do. So let's just go back to the beginning here now and recount. What the heck did I say? Well, you want to, pay down your debts, right? Whatever it is. You do want to put money where it can grow, so you need investments. You want to limit overhead. Not to go too far into that, but it's my opinion from what I see in the streets is that so many Americans spend so much money on stuff that's just, I think it's silly. No, they don't, obviously, but I do. That there's a lot of expenditures we make that's like, it's just another flash in the pan, something exciting, we get tied into this stuff. I don't usually move on anything unless I figure out a reason why I really got to have that. That's kind of how I am. Sort of a curmudgeon that way. Won't add expenses or spend money unless I can look at it and go, oh yeah, it's quality. I can really get use out of that, and I can see why that's going to make me either more wealthy or make my life easier, or something on that order. And so I'll do it. Yeah. And believe me, I will not spare expense. Cheapness is one of the worst habits you can get into. It becomes a psychological hurdle for you. Everything's too expensive now. Yeah, it is, right? Yeah. Inflation, shrinkflation, everything is too expensive right now. Ask me if I care. Not much. Not really. Enough to complain about a Pete's coffee bag because it made a video, but no, I don't really care. If it was pinching me, I would, but it's not. See, that's it. We're just not set, so even inflation has that much of an effect on us. One of the worst things in the inflation was the gas. I don't use it, so on. Set yourself up. Yeah, like I say, then, pay attention to those mortgages and what you can do with them when you sell off a house. Consider staying put and downsizing, staying put period, staying put and letting somebody rent part of your house. All kinds of possibilities, each and every one of us. Now, here in Hawaii, I suppose it'd be entirely possible if you were retiring right here and you've been here, hey, open yourself a bed and breakfast. People come here all the time. I see them all the time. I don't necessarily want to run a bed and breakfast, but I do profit from the tourists that come through the islands. So there's another thing. When it comes to when you're retiring, where are you positioning yourself? Some people's desires will put them way out into the woods someplace, and that's just where they want to be. They want to be away from everybody else. That's the dream, and that's okay. Now, if you do that, you're probably not going to have people coming to you or people finding you very much, unless you're on a excellent fishing lake in Alaska or Minnesota or someplace. You know, so location. Where is that place? Is that place capable of generating income because people want to visit there? I mean, I don't have a big sign out here on the road that says, "Hey, come on in and spend money." You know, we are not a tourist trap. We're just a home and a farm. That's all we are, in a nursery. And I do have the sign marked on the gate, and so people come in here. But it really isn't designed as a tourist trap. And barely a business. A lot of times people are worried about coming in because it looks pretty residential, and it is. Yeah. But the location, man, you know, it's great because everybody wants to be in Hawaii, you know. I see my brother more often than I ever did. I see my son more often than I ever did. The other one don't move around at all, so I don't see him. But anyway, I see more people now than I did for the 25 years I lived in California as far as visitors coming to see us, you know. All right, well, that's enough said. Just putting that out there because I'm sure there are people, especially right now, with, I hate to think what your 401k looks like, who are struggling and worried. I'm sure there's a tremendous amount of worry. Well, you know, my retirement accounts went through several different economic collapses, including the 2008, and the 2008 actually made me the most money. Because after it hit bottom, I went feeding. And I picked up everything off the bottom of the market. I threw it in my portfolio. And today it's going into a bear mode again, and it's heading downward. And I'm sitting around thinking, rather than worrying about it, I'm getting ready to buy more stock. Yeah, bear market going to last maybe 12 months. Yeah. That's the prediction anyway. And then we'll probably return to maybe about 3 years of bull market. That's the standard anyway. And so it will be relatively short-lived, we hope. It could lead to a worldwide depression. Everything could fall apart, and we could have Putin throwing nukes at Ukraine, starting a nuclear war and a disaster, and split the planet in two. You know, on the other hand, this could be a very bright future for all of us, depending on what happens and how we look at it. Aloha. Hang loose.